Okay, welcome to my YouTube channel. Now, I've got for you next is a audio recording which I found on a audio cassette, much as similar to one of these. Now, I only came across it because I've been hunting around to do a little project of producing a coffee table that looks like a audio cassette tape and making it slightly larger. Anyway, that's not the purpose of this video. So, I came across this audio cassette and it had on it the recording of the first launch of this first space shuttle, Columbia, back in 1981. So here is the actual sound recording.
On April 12, 1981, NASA launched the world's first reusable manned spacecraft. In the minutes before takeoff, Kennedy Space Center Launch Control communicates with astronauts John Young and Robert Crippen as they prepare to take Columbia on its first test flight into space and back. It was 30 years ago this week that NASA ushered in a new era of spaceflight with the inaugural launch of Space Shuttle Columbia on April 12, 1981, setting the pace for 3 decades of monumental leaps in environmental and space science achievements.
Good afternoon to you from the Columbia studio, and the news is that the American shuttle will not go today. Disappointing news indeed, because up to 11 minutes ago it did appear that the problems which had dogged the launch at its scheduled time of 10 minutes to 1 this afternoon had been put right, things had been reorganized for a launch just 10 minutes from now. Then, 11 minutes ago, we heard the news that the initial problem with the computer system had not been sorted out, and that the much troubled American space shuttle will stay on the ground for at least the next 48 hours.
It sounds rather incredible, but in fact, computer programs have been modified the whole time, and over the years, gradually, they perfected the instructions as well as the data stored in it. So the first thing was to dump so-called information out, compare it to the master bank, which is what it should be doing. This took, as you know, that's part of half an hour or so, and then they found that apparently it was the right program. Now, this in a way was rather disappointing, because had they found that there was some small piece of information wrong, it would have been much easier to correct it at that time. So now we have the irony of the program being correct, the other 4 programs being correct in the main computers, and this inability to check with each other and communicate between these computers. Now here we have, of course, the flight possibility, as they said in that announcement, but there may be some small part of the electronic circuitry fault. Then that is a problem, because you can't change the circuitry, then you've got to change the computer. Now, okay, in 48 hours, it's certainly physically possible to plug it in and out. But that's why they're now busily working on, is it hardware, is it software, and how does it get back to the whole of the hardware?
So the shuttle, which has had a tough history over so many years, having a tough time even in the build-up to its launch.
That's
Jeffrey,
right.
let's wait for a second or two. Let's put a hold into this one at this stage and go live to the Cape again to get the latest from here. Hello, Mike. Yes, Cape Canaveral is now echoing to the sounds of a circus leaving town. Trailers are being hitched up and driven out. There's thousands of reporters from all over the world trying to rebook the hotel rooms they checked out of earlier today. I suppose the only bit of good news I can give you is that you may remember that earlier I was wondering where Bo Derek and Gregory Peck and all the rest of the Hollywood stars were that were supposed to be here. Well, I'm now informed by a reliable source that Clint Eastwood has been frustrated along with the rest of us here, as well as Angie Dickinson, Pat Boone and John Denver. I can even tell you that the governor of Florida was playing baseball in front of the grandstand. So at least someone was having a nice time. Back to you, mate. Thank you, Kim. Thank you very much indeed. Let's have one quick word from Jeffrey. How quickly could they possibly get the system back on the road again? Is 48 hours realistic?
Yes, it's possible. It depends very much as to whether they find there's some fundamental reprogramming. They couldn't reprogram the whole thing at that time, but I think there's a very good chance that given a few hours, not under the pressures, as it were, which they certainly have at the present moment, they can determine it. I mean, it's not as if it started from scratch, no question of that at all. But the key thing is to find out why it happened. Then I think there's a very good chance that the facilities available to really move in and get things ready for launch.
So 48 hours is not out of the question.
Not out of the question at all.
Jeff Ricardo, many thanks indeed. So there it is, the sad news: Columbia will not make her launch date. Indeed, her schedule has been a tricky one ever since she was first conceived. Let's end this first program, because indeed we'll keep you posted throughout the project as best we can for what is happening, and when the great event does take place, we will be there to cover it. But let's hear once again the news from Space Center Control at Cape Canaveral in Florida, which told us that today the American Space Shuttle was going to stay on the ground.
The launch director, George Page, and Center Director Dick Smith have just announced that we will scrub the launch attempt for today. We will stop the clock probably at the T-minus 9-minute point and send out a crew to open the hatch of the orbiter and take the crew back to the astronaut quarters. The earliest time in which we could possibly reschedule the launch will be for Sunday morning at 6:50 a.m. What this is dependent on, of course, is resolution of the problem which we have had in today's launch attempt. That problem has not been traced to whether it is strictly a software problem or whether it possibly has something to do with the hardware. What has occurred has been that there are 5 flight computers on board the orbiter. The normal configuration for a launch is that 4 of them are programmed for the ascent run, and the 5th has a backup program in it. Each time as we went down the countdown, there was an inability of the backup computer to communicate properly with the other 4 general purpose computers. We have attempted to check out the program. The program that was in the backup computer was the proper program, the one that we had planned to put there. However, what that does not say is whether there is some problem that is in that program which is not understood at this moment. In any case, we have to recycle and will have a determination probably later today as to whether to reschedule for Sunday. The reason that Sunday would be the earliest possible time we could schedule for has to do with the conditioning of the liquid hydrogen tank in the external tank. This is the tank which supplies the fuel to the main engines on the orbiter. The liquid hydrogen which is placed in the tank is a very, very cold minus 423 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. In order to ensure that there be no damage to the metal in the tank, there has to be at least a 24-hour conditioning period after the liquid hydrogen is drained from that tank before liquid hydrogen can again be placed in it. Since we are this late in the launch window at this time, it will not be possible to drain that and then have the proper conditioning period and then reload it in time to schedule a launch for tomorrow. So at the present time, we have terminated our launch attempt for today and will reschedule for no earlier than Sunday morning at 6:50 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is Shuttle Launch Control.
When the main engines fire, the shuttle will stay clamped to the launch pad, despite their enormous power trying to wrench it away. Something like the power of 23 Hoover dams, according to the maker. Now, Launch Control wants to be sure they're working properly first, but they know as well that as long as the shuttle is held down, the engines are going to force the whole stack to bend or twang with the strain. Now, that will only be a few inches. They'll feel it in the cockpit, and we won't see it from here. It'll take a few seconds to ease back into position, and that's when they'll light the solid boosters. They'll reach full power in just half a second. That's when they'll explode the hold-down bolt, and with all those engines firing together, we're going to see one heck of a lot of smoke and flame. As John Young said, it's going to clear the tower a lot quicker than the old Apollo ship.
5 seconds and counting. T-minus 40 seconds and counting. The development flight instrumentation recorders are on. T-minus 35 seconds. We're just a few seconds away from switching to the redundant set sequencer. T-minus 27 seconds. We have gone for redundant set sequencer start. T-minus 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15, 14, 13, T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. We've gone for main engine start. We have
shuttle. And the shuttle has cleared the tower. What a fantastic sight. Now at the speed of sound. And the cheering and clapping here all over the case. On the others, Houston, you're both throttle up.